My name is Emily. That was never the part people remembered. What people noticed was this. I was always available. If something needed to be handled quietly, I did it. If plans fell apart, I stepped in. If emotions ran high, I smoothed them out. Over time, that became my role. From the outside, my family looks normal. Healthy even. We show up to events. We smile for photos. We laugh in group chats. Nothing about us looks broken. That day didn't look broken either. It was a family gathering. Nothing formal. Just one of those events everyone attends because it's expected. Relatives. Friends. People who have known me my entire life. I arrived early like I usually do. I helped set things up. Moved chairs. Answered questions. Fixed small problems before anyone else noticed them. No one asked me to help. They never do. That feeling didn't leave me after that night. It followed me home. It stayed quiet, but it stayed present. I started noticing things I'd brushed off for years. How my phone only rang when something needed fixing. How plans were already made before I was informed. How my time was treated like open space anyone could step into. The pattern wasn't loud. That's what made it easy to ignore. It showed up in small requests. Last-minute favors. Quick questions that turned into hours. Problems framed as emergencies because someone else didn't want to deal with them. I was always the calm one. The steady one. The person who didn't panic, didn't complain, didn't say no. People liked that about me. They joked about it. They'd say things like, "You don't really need much. You're low maintenance. You're just easy." At the time, I thought that was praise. Now I understand what it actually meant. Low maintenance meant low priority. Easy meant expendable. Whenever I tried to pull back even slightly, it was dismissed. If I said I couldn't help right away, they laughed it off. If I said I was tired, they changed the subject. If I said no, they waited. Hours later, the same request would come back. Reworded. Softer. Still assumed. Sometimes I gave in. Not because I wanted to, but because it felt easier than being questioned. Every time I crossed my own boundary, it moved farther away. What stood out wasn't anger. It was disbelief. They didn't believe my limits were real. They didn't think I'd keep them. And until recently, they were right. I realized something uncomfortable. I had trained people how to treat me. Not with words. With consistency. I showed up every time. I fixed things quietly. I absorbed stress, so others didn't have to. And over time, that became expected. No one asked how much it cost me. No one asked if I was overwhelmed. They assumed I was fine, because I always said I was. And maybe I believed it too. I told myself this was just how families worked. That being needed meant being loved. That staying quiet was maturity. But that story started to feel thin. One night, I looked at my calendar and realized something strange. Most of my free time wasn't actually free. It was reserved. Held open for other people's needs. I didn't remember agreeing to that. That's when the exhaustion really settled in. Not physical. Emotional. The kind that doesn't go away with sleep. I wasn't angry yet. I wasn't planning anything. I was just tired of being the solution no one protected. And that led to a question I couldn't avoid anymore. If people only reach for you when they're falling, do they care about you? Or about the safety net you provide? I didn't have the answer yet, but I was getting closer. The moment that changed everything didn't feel dramatic at all. It was a Tuesday morning. The kind of morning that feels ordinary enough to disappear from memory. Nothing special planned. Nothing wrong yet. My phone rang. I recognized the tone before the words even landed. Urgent but not panicked. Casual but expectant. They needed help with something that had suddenly become a problem. Again, there was a deadline. There always was. They didn't ask if I could help. They told me when they needed it handled. Out of habit, my mouth almost said yes. Instead, I said I'd think about it. The silence that followed felt heavier than it should have. Not on the call. Inside me. When I hung up, I didn't feel guilty. That surprised me. I didn't feel anxious either. I just sat there. And in that quiet, something shifted. I replayed the conversation in my head, not emotionally, but clearly. Nothing about it was an emergency. No one was in danger. Nothing would collapse if I didn't step in immediately. It wasn't urgent. It was convenient. That realization settled slowly, like a truth finally given room. For years, I had been filling gaps other people created, covering delays, absorbing pressure, making sure consequences never reached the people responsible. They teased me for being simple, for not needing much, for being fine all the time. But the truth was I wasn't struggling. I had savings. I had stability. I had choices. They just never noticed because my availability made it unnecessary. Another thought followed, sharper than the rest. When I didn't immediately say yes, no one checked on me. No one asked if I was okay. No one wondered why I hesitated. The follow-up messages weren't about me. They were about the problem. Any update? Just checking in. We really need this handled. That's when it became impossible to ignore. I wasn't being contacted because I mattered. I was being contacted because I functioned. And for the first time, I didn't rush to fix that. I didn't respond right away. Not out of spite. Not to make a point. I just didn't. Minutes passed. Then hours. Nothing terrible happened.
No crisis. No fallout.
The world kept moving. That was unsettling. I realized how often urgency had been manufactured simply because I existed. Because there was always someone willing to step in and make things smooth.
Me.
That pause wasn't hesitation. It was awareness. And awareness has consequences. I knew then that if I answered like I always had, nothing would change. The pattern would continue. My role would stay intact. So, I made a quiet decision. I wasn't going to explain myself. I wasn't going to argue. I wasn't going to justify my limits. I was going to step back and see what happened when I wasn't immediately available. Have you ever wondered what would happen if you stopped saving people who never planned to save you? That question didn't feel angry. It felt honest. And once I asked it, I couldn't go back to pretending I didn't know the answer. I didn't make an announcement. I didn't sit anyone down. I didn't explain what I was doing or why. I just changed my behavior. Messages stayed unanswered longer than usual. Calls went to voicemail. When I did reply, it was brief. I can't help with that. I'm busy this week. I won't be able to take this on.
No apologies.
No long explanations.
No emotional cushioning.
At first, they were confused. Then the confusion turned into impatience. The follow-ups came faster. The tone sharpened. I could hear it even through text. The expectation that I would eventually step in like I always had. But this time I didn't. One situation made everything impossible to ignore. A problem came up that I normally would have handled without thinking. Same type of issue. Same sense of urgency. This time, I stayed quiet. Hours passed. Then another message. Then another. The tone shifted from casual to stressed. From stressed to irritated. Eventually, someone else tried to fix it. Not smoothly. Not efficiently. But they tried. Watching that happen felt strange. Not satisfying. Not cruel. Just revealing. I saw how much responsibility had been sitting on me without acknowledgement. How much work had been hidden behind the assumption that things were easy. Nothing dramatic happened.
No yelling. No confrontation.
But something cracked quietly. Without me smoothing things over, small problems stayed visible. Deadlines slipped. Plans stalled. People had to deal with the consequences they'd been avoiding. And something unexpected happened inside me. I felt lighter. My sleep improved. My calendar opened up. My mind felt calmer than it had in years. The chaos wasn't gone. It just wasn't mine anymore. That's when I understood this wasn't punishment. It was balance correcting itself. The change didn't come with an apology. It came with distance. People reached out less. And when they did, their tone was different. Careful. Measured. No one joked about me being easy anymore. No one assumed I'd drop everything. They asked first. And sometimes, they didn't ask at all. That told me everything I needed to know. At one point, I caught myself waiting. Not for a message. Not for an apology. For recognition. I wondered if someone would finally notice my absence. If they'd ask why I wasn't around as much. If they'd check in without needing something fixed. That moment never came. And that hurt more than I expected. Not because I wanted validation, but because it confirmed what I had already started to understand. My presence had been valued for its function, not for who I was. Once I stopped performing that role, there was nothing for them to reach for. I thought about all the times I'd shown up quietly, the late nights, the emotional cleanups, the stress I absorbed so others could stay comfortable. None of it was remembered. None of it was missed. And oddly, that clarity was freeing. It meant I hadn't failed. I had simply stepped out of a system that only worked when I carried it. I also noticed something else. Without the constant pull from other people's needs, my own life started to feel larger. I had energy at the end of the day. I had thoughts that weren't about managing someone else's crisis. I had space to decide what I wanted, instead of reacting to what was demanded. That space felt unfamiliar at first, almost uncomfortable, but then it felt steady. And steady felt better than needed ever had. There was grief in the shift, not for the role I left behind, but for how long I stayed in it. I thought about all the times I minimized myself to stay included, all the times I traded rest for approval, all the moments I called it loyalty instead of fear. I didn't lose my family. I lost the illusion that my exhaustion was love. And once that illusion broke, I didn't want it back. I didn't confront anyone. I didn't demand respect. I didn't explain myself. I just stayed where I was, outside the center, no longer holding the weight. And in that space, I felt something unfamiliar. Stability. For a long time, I believed being strong meant staying, fixing, absorbing, keeping the peace at my own expense. Now I understand strength differently. Strength isn't endless availability. It isn't sacrificing yourself quietly so others stay comfortable. Strength is knowing when to step back and let silence do the work. The version of me they depended on is gone. Not because she was weak, but because she was tired. The version that remains chooses carefully where she shows up, who she supports, what she carries. Nothing exploded. Nothing ended loudly. Things simply shifted into their proper places. And for the first time, I wasn't useful. I was free. If the only time people value you is when you're saving them, is walking away selfish? Or is it self-respect?